You are listening to Small Business Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives small business owners the straight talk on productivity, time management, business systems, leading your teams, strategic decision-making, and mindset. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the productivity specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to the Small Business Straight Talk podcast. Today is episode 321, Lessons in Leadership and Strong Cultures with Jaime Taets. If you're a small business owner who wants to learn effective business strategies, improve time management, and elevate productivity to maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. I'm looking forward to bringing our guest, Jaime Taets, to the podcast today. Jaime Taets is the CEO of Keystone Group International, a public speaker, author, podcast host, and thought leader who is focused on helping you uncover the fears that are holding you back today and creating a lasting impact. Before we dive into the conversation with Jaime, I wanted to share a bit with you about my business group coaching program, Leverage Lab. I wanted to share with you a little bit about what you get when you join us inside Leverage Lab. Each month, I do 2 live coaching sessions where I will coach you and answer your questions. And I wanted to give you some ideas of topics that you as a member can bring up or that others will be bringing up and that you can listen in and get the expertise and advice and coaching to apply to your business as others are getting coached on these topics as well. Things that we talk about inside Leverage Lab are boundaries, habits, routines, building your team, hiring, saying no, business strategies, how to handle interruptions, how to improve your leadership, mindset, how to handle delegation, multitasking. How about those times where self-sabotage comes up, or you have a difficult client and you need to navigate how to deal with them? Or perhaps you are making business decisions and you need a sounding board to process through your options to ensure that you make the best choice for you and your business. We also talk about prioritizing, energy management, how to create focus, how to set goals, achieve your goals, work-life balance, time blocking, planning your days, your weeks, your months. These are just a few of the topics that come up inside our group coaching program. Along with the live coaching program, you get access to these coaching sessions via a private podcast as well as recorded video. So if there's any time you can't make a session live, you still can have access to the group coaching sessions. In addition to coaching, we also have what I call my STOP, S-T-O-P, Leverage Formula Masterclasses. We have 14 masterclasses in there that goes through my STOP Leverage Formula. Things like destination by design. How do you set goals? What metrics do you track? How do you actually get a vision for your personal and your business life? How about planning for your entire life, not just goals in the business, but goals outside of the business? And how can you ensure those are working together? We also talk about things like task management, freedom to focus. We have classes on how to be a power planner. And let's not forget organization, creating those business systems. How about digital detox and office space overhaul? And lastly, in the people pillar, we have building a dream team with plenty of resources, how-tos, templates on how to make your next hire seamless, effortless, and successful. Those are just a few of the master classes, but these are all on demand, and they are also available via video or our private podcast. We also have app recommendations. We have step-by-step action sheets. We have power sheets that are essentially the worksheets to apply what you're learning in these master classes. And this isn't just any master class. You get to watch the master class and then come to a coaching session to get customized support. There is no limit to the growth you can achieve when you have access to transformational and empowering coaching, exceptional and impactful training, the support and collaboration of a community, and helpful resources that all can be found inside Leverage Lab. So as I pulled back the curtains to share a bit about what you can find inside Leverage Lab, I would invite you to check out more details and join us by heading on over to amberdelagarza.com/Leverage Lab. Again, that's amberdelagarza.com/Leverage Lab. And now, let's meet our guest and get to the straight talk. Hi, Jaime. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I am looking forward to chatting to you about leadership and culture and how that can help us in our businesses. But before we jump in, I would love to hear a little bit about you, what we didn't get to hear in your official bio, and why do I get to talk to you about leadership today?
Yeah, so I am a small town girl, grew up in Iowa, and I grew up in a family business. And in a small family business, and when I went to college, I wanted to get the furthest thing away from small family business. But once I got my big business experience, it came full circle. And I 10 years ago decided to become an entrepreneur myself and start my business, and really wanted to focus on helping small businesses scale with less pain. And I say that very intentionally, with less pain versus no pain, because that's not
Right.
possible. If anyone is promising that, they're full of it, right? There's always going to be pain. But what my company now does is helps organizations scale, both from have a strategy, understand, where you're going and what the market can deliver. So we do a lot of that work. But the most important part of the work that we do, in addition to that, is what you talked about is, are we the leader? Are we ready to drive that scalability and growth? And do we have the right people on our teams, right? The right leaders on our teams? And have we built a culture that can withstand the change that's going to be required? And I think that's where a lot of leaders, myself included, over the years have fallen short of achieving our strategy and our growth, is because we don't look at those other ceilings in our own leadership and how we need to evolve. And are we evolving faster than the business is as leaders?
Oh, that's a really good last line. Are we evolving faster than the businesses? One of the things that I often say is that sometimes the business needs more from us than we have the skill set for or the capacity
100%.
for. And leadership, I would say leadership and marketing are two of the areas I feel like business owners are like, small business owners, right? Like, I need it. I know it's important, but these are gaps that are outside of our unique skill set, our talents, the reason we even got into business.
Yes.
And, leadership, in my experience, is like always evolving as you're learning about yourself. And man, it's kind of like parenting. I don't know if you're a parent, but you're like, yeah, I got this. And then they change ages and you're like, I don't know if I got this. And their teams are very much the same. You're like, okay, I got this. And then something changes or a new team member. So let's just dive into what are some of the challenges? So you said you help business owners like not know challenges, but that you help them lessen them. So what are those challenges that you help lessen a business owner around leadership?
Yeah. Around leadership, it ties into culture. We see them very much as inextricable. But first off, it's self-awareness. And you've probably talked about it on the show, but the idea of the founder's dilemma, right? I am a founder as well, and I understand it. That self-awareness of where are our limitations, but not only limitations, where is our energy best suited for the organization? And I think a lot of small business owners get past where their energy is and they don't recognize it until it starts to have a detriment to the business. And oftentimes that is in the leadership side. And I'll tell my own very personal story is 2022. So I made it, right? I have staff of people. I made it through 2020. We grew 40%, right? In the midst as a services business. We grew again in 2021. We were flat in 2022, but that's not even the biggest issue is I had the toughest year of my entire career as a leader in 2022 after all the chaos. Everyone else was chaotic in 21 and 2021. And I had the worst year of my professional career as a leader. And it took me having to take a step back and say, I'm doing things I don't even love in the business anymore, and it's having a detriment to the business. Even though I feel like I'm supposed to still do it, I feel like I'm supposed to still have everyone reporting to me, and I'm too small to hire somebody, right, to do all of that. And the biggest thing I did at the beginning of this year was I hired a COO president, and everyone reports to that person. And I'm now back into the things that give me energy and that help the business grow. But it's a lot of humbleness that you have to take to say, I'm not good at that thing.
Right. So I guess, what, can you share a little bit of how did you figure that out? Like, a year is a long time. So it had to have been like a combination of things over time that the business needed more from you in a leadership capacity.
Yep.
And maybe it wasn't, I'm curious, maybe it's not more than you can give. It's just that you didn't want to give it your energy to that area of the business.
Yeah.
You wanted to give it to other areas.
And I would say, yes, that's exactly what it was. It wasn't that I couldn't do it. It was that I started to recognize that the limited amount of time I had in amongst the chaos and building the business and clients and everything else, I wasn't walking towards the things my team actually needed. I wasn't being the leader that the business needed. And I recognized it, but I didn't have the energy for it wasn't what was exciting to me. It didn't feel natural to me. And it was through the course of that year. It also was a couple of wrong hires that then didn't turn out right and really started to affect our culture, where I started to realize that I was a big part of the problem, meaning I needed to get out of the way of those areas that just weren't in my expertise or passion area anymore. And I think that's essentially what the founder's dilemma is. And it doesn't mean I can't do some of them. It doesn't mean I don't still do some of them, but it was that recognition of what does the team need? What's the business need from me? And that was very different than what it needed for me 3 or 5 years before that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes we get stuck in, but I know how to do it, so I'll do it.
Yeah.
And it actually is a ceiling that can cause the business to not grow. And we're doing what we think is right for the business, and it has a negative impact.
Yeah. So I love this idea of the fact that you said it, because as a small business owner, it's assumed, or should, and we hate those words, that if I am the business owner, I'm the CEO and I'm also the leader. And so I love that you broke that and just said, it doesn't need to be all the same person. I don't have to wear all those hats. Can you share with us that journey? And one thing you alluded to was also you had to financially prepare for this. This is a big next hire in a small business that you must have felt like was really important, but had to have taken some preparing the business to even withstand that role in the company.
Yeah. And, I don't say this and say this was an easy decision and it was easy financially. I mean, all of these, right? As the business owner, we're taking risks every day, right? In what we're doing and what we're choosing not to do and those types of things. And so it was this realization, again, over time. It wasn't like I woke up one day and realized this, but it was this realization that a mentor told me that in order to grow and achieve what you want to achieve, sometimes you have to write bigger checks. And I'll never forget that. And they didn't mean, they did, but they didn't mean physically write checks, but it was, you have to invest in order to gain the reward. And I see so many small business owners that just right at their own detriment, right? They're just scrapping it, really scrappy, which is a really good quality in an entrepreneur until it's not. Right. Until it actually impedes the growth of the business. And I think I had just been scrappy. I can do it. I can figure it out nights and weekends. And I had turned into a leader that I didn't want to work for. And it was because I wasn't saying the few $1,000s to outsource marketing a month is worth it because I'm not good at it and it just makes me frazzled. And right,
Yeah.
when I come in to do the things I am good at, I'm not able to give them what they need. And so it was those moments of slowly outsourcing, not hiring full-time people. I think as a small business owner, there are these ceilings of just like, go outsource it for a bit. And when it gets big enough, then maybe consider hiring somebody, whether it's a virtual assistant, it's marketing, test the market, right? And test what you need before you just go start hiring people, because that's too big of a risk and you'll end up hiring the wrong person, likely.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I started outsourcing a lot of things that I knew I wasn't good at. And then I got to a point where it's like, okay, I'm spending enough now where it justifies a person that can do these things. So it
Right.
was very calculated.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great point because it wasn't that long ago. There wasn't as many options to get support in a small business as there is now. It's incredibly creative. It got pushed to new limits when COVID, but even just previously before that, we have high level employees that they wouldn't be employees, roles. Let me get
Yep.
that straight.
Yep.
We have high level roles that can be filled with fractional contract, incredibly skilled, that was not available 10 years ago or was limitedly available. So to just say, like, get creative, what you knew to be norm could be different for you right now. And there are options. And those options often fall between our brain saying, I need to hire somebody. That must mean full time and in my office. And there's so much gray between not having that hire and that full time in office person.
Or a business leader, a business owner saying, well, I feel like I need to hire somebody, but like if we talk about their accountability box is this huge mix of everything in the business. And so what we recommend and what I did is really map out an accountability chart, meaning the functions that need to exist in your business.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're sitting in all the seats right now, that's fine. But at least you've separated out all of the different functions that you're performing. So for example, finance function, right? There's a lot that goes on in there.
Yeah.
It could be insurance, it could be taxes, it could be bookkeeping, it could be, right? All
Mm-hmm.
payroll, all of those things. Put that in a function together so you can see it separately, right? Like it doesn't need to be a separate person, but it's separate. Marketing. I'm doing all the social, I'm doing this, and put it all in a box, but put it in a separate box instead of this jumbled box of I do all of these things as a business owner, and really start to take a step back, because that's what's going to give you the confidence to say, wow, as the business has grown, that finance box got way more complicated than it was when I started the business. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm still trying to take on all of that. It'll give you the confidence to say, that's the first box. I don't enjoy it. And that's the first box that I should outsource and start talking to people. But because you've done that work, when you go to find somebody that can help you, a fractional resource, you've already said, here's the box. Here's the function that I think my business needs. They might have other ideas on additional things you should be doing, but it makes the scope of that agreement and that relationship very clear for both you and them on what you think you need as a business.
Yeah.
And all of that gets removed from your plate, which frees you up to do things that grow the business.
Yeah. I call them buckets, and they're
Yep.
often referred to as, in a big company, it's departments. Like we don't think of that as small business owners, that we're leading the marketing department, the sales department, the service and client
HR.
department, the leadership, the HR. And I mean, the departments really go on and on, but I love that, boundary of the box of being so clear. And my head just goes, that's really can translate to your schedule, to your calendar, that right now, when you're feeling so many roles in your business, it's really incredibly difficult or challenging, not impossible, to focus. But one of the strategies to help you focus is to have these boxes align on your calendar so that you're like, great. Yes, there's a lot going on, but the box that I'm in right now is the finance box or the
Yes.
marketing box.
Yep.
Because you almost have to shut out the other departments and just keep shifting your energy and time, which just brings us to what we're talking about. At some point, that shift is too big of a lift, that shift of going from one department because it needs so much from you to the next, to the next. And you realize which one's draining my energy? Which one am I in the most that I don't need to be in?
And when you have employees and you're shifting and burning your energy, what do you have left for them?
Right.
That's where the leadership component comes in, is as business owners, we become an image of a leader that we don't even like. And we're excusing it because we're so busy and we've got 400 emails and we've got, right, and our schedule and
Mm-hmm.
this and that. But really the only way that's going to fix that is for us to free up the things that are, right, getting in the way. And understanding that's not a luxury for everybody, but it's the only way the business scales.
Right.
And you can do it in small bits. It doesn't have to be you outsource everything all at once. But it's kind of that elevation. Every time you do that, it frees you up. And that cycle time that you have can be invested. I use that investment word very specifically, invested in something that will grow the business. You spending 10 hours a week in finance is necessary, that finance is taken care of, but it's not going to grow the business when you're
Right.
10 hours in finance.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just maintaining it. And it's necessary to maintain it, but you're going to see a plateau. You referenced culture and you referenced being a frazzled leader if we're split amongst all these responsibilities. Share with me how you advise people to nurture, create that culture. Yeah, I'd love
Yeah.
to hear your insights on that.
Yeah. And so in 2023, I released a book called The Culture Climb, and I wrote it specifically for the average business leader or business owner, right? Not for an HR professional that needs to be an expert on culture, because I wanted to simplify it down, because I do believe it's a competitive advantage for profitability, right? To be really clear, it's not, it will help, right? Top line. But what I'm really looking at when we're looking at businesses and the health of a business is how profitable, how healthy are you? And when your culture is really strong, your people will move mountains for you, right? They will handle that customer issue in the right way, right? Their energy will be high. And so culture is really your choice as a business owner or a leader. It's not for someone else to solve. And so what we recommend, especially with small businesses, is create a culture vision. And I'll even tell you, right, and we can, at the end of the show, I can give you the URL for the book, but we have a free tool that people can download that helps with their team, helps them walk through to say, we're going to build this business together, right? What do we want our culture to be?
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's not that today, what words do we want to use to describe our culture? How do we want to think, act, and interact together as this business builds? Because what that's going to do is set a solid foundation for when you go from your first employee to 5 employees to 10 to 30 to 50, right? Whatever, however the business scales, if you have that foundation, you now know who you want on the team when you're
Mm-hmm.
ready to hire that next person, you know, and you can articulate to them, this is what it means to be part of our culture. I think a lot of business owners think it's strategy and it's new clients and it's customer. Those are all important things. But if you get the culture piece right, your customers are treated well, right? Your customers come
Yeah.
back and they refer you to other people. And so it's sometimes hard to get small business owners to think about that culture piece first, but it truly is the foundation that everything else is built on.
Yeah. When I hear you speaking right now, what comes up is it lets you enjoy the journey. Like, who wants to build a business to work with people
Right.
that you're not enjoying and you're with them oftentimes more than you are with the people you choose in your family?
Right.
So by prioritizing the culture, it's not only profitability, which is amazing, but that journey to profitability and leading the team, it seems much more enjoyable.
Right. And most of us have started a business after leaving another career or
Mm.
another business. And we didn't leave that other business because it was the best job ever. We left it because, and this was a commitment I made to myself when I decided to, right, start a business, was I said, I'm doing this, yes, for the services we can offer and the impact, but I'm doing it so I can work with the people I want to work with. And that was the clients and the employee side, because when you're working in someone else's organization, you don't get to choose that necessarily. So
Right.
why would I take all the risk of starting my own business to do work I don't want to do with people I don't want to do it with? That is a recipe for disaster as a business owner.
And yet it's so common.
It is.
You quit because you don't like one boss to give yourself a bunch of bosses, bunch of clients you don't like.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you don't have that leadership, honestly, your employees start bossing you around in different ways, like
Yes.
telling you when they're going to come in, whether they're speaking it or they're just doing it. It's about how they're interacting. Like I'm jokingly saying bosses, but you have these who's leading. If you're not leading, someone else is leading the relationship.
100%. And there's no, just to release the pressure on, it's one more thing a business owner needs to understand. Now I got to be a good leader. It's being a leader that's authentically who you are. But you talked about kids earlier. It's being a good parent to the organization.
Mhm.
That's really what it is. And we talk about being good parents, meaning, and I have 4 teenagers, so this really rings true to me, is being a good parent is having rules, and rules meaning not 25. The rules are your values,
Mm,
what you will tolerate in the business,
yes.
right? How we treat each other. Having repeating yourself, right? Repetition, meaning I see a lot of leaders that say, I sent an email. Why can't she figure it out? I already told her how to do this once. The repetition is just like your teenagers or your kids. How many times do you tell them once to do something and they magically do that now from here forward?
I mean, my life would be completely
Ever?
different.
Never.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. The answer is
So
never.
being a good parent is having a little bit of patience, but repeating yourself to say,
Mhm.
oh, you didn't do it again, right? Or you're short. We have to do the same thing with our employees and
Yeah.
not treat them like children, but we have to realize our vision is not their vision. We have to help them see the things we see, to connect the dots that we connect. And then the last piece, so it's rules, repetition, and the last piece is consistency. And as business owners, we are our own worst. We are not as consistent as we think we are. We
Mhm.
chase things. We do it one way one time and do it another way the next time. And then we're asking our employees and our customers to just figure it out when we haven't actually built the systems and processes to allow us to be consistent in how we deliver our product or service.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
mean, even if you're not consistent with your holding the boundary or the standard, you reference standards. And when you're speaking about kids, we use that language in my house. Like these are our standards, not the
yes,
rules. We don't use rules. We say
right.
these are our standards and they have not changed since you were a toddler. They may look different and present different. So back to the employee side is that if you're not holding those standards, you're giving mixed messages.
You
How
are.
can you hold the line one day and say this is what we do and then the next day just look away or be so exhausted or distracted? One, it's confusing to the employee, but I also find that it's confusing to the leader because then the third time after they ignored it a couple of times, they don't feel empowered to actually hold that line on that standard because they look the other way the other 2 times.
Yes. And so it creates cultural confusion.
Mm,
Right? It creates confusion on how we think, act, and interact, which is how we describe culture. Because when you can come in late 3 days a week and no one says anything, but I don't, right? And it's like, but we say our value is respecting others' time. It's like, well, no, it's not, because we're letting that happen over here because we don't want to have the hard conversation. And
mm,
as a business owner, a lot of us are people pleasers and we want everyone to be happy and we want everything to be easy and right and let's just do what we do, and that's not part of being a leader. It's
right.
not making everybody happy. I tell my team, I'm not here to be liked every day. I want to be respected, and there's going to be decisions I make that you're not going to like. It's part of the role I have to take risks and do the right thing for the business. But I want you to respect while I'm doing it, and that's a very different conversation with your employees.
Absolutely. Do you have any advice around as small business owners? We intimately know our employees more than any corporation where the leaders just, coming in or there's this divided line between management and employees or the C-level suite. Those lines get very blurred in a small business.
Mhm.
Any tips and strategies around being incredibly friendly, understanding that their parents are sick? Like we hear these stories, but then we have to hold the line on them showing up at work, doing their best, being on time.
Right. So the key here, it's not, I don't want to make it sound simplistic because it's hard in concept, but is accountability, right? Back to those buckets or functions and what everybody is accountable for. People can, you can be creative in how things get done, working around people's life things that are happening, right? A sick kid, right? Or an elderly parent, or the things that are going to happen as humans that distract us or take us away. But if accountabilities in an organization are clear, meaning you know what I expect of you and I know what I expect, right? It's clear in both directions. That's what allows for flexibility and autonomy. That's where we build trust across an employee base because we know that I'm still getting my work done, right? Because I know what I'm accountable for and what the team needs me to do. As leaders, as business owners, our job, our number one job is to build trust and drive accountability. And accountability feels punitive. It's actually serving the people that report to us because it's the clarity that they need to know I'm doing what I need to be doing, right? I can go home at night and feel successful, which as humans, we're wired for that achievement. We want to feel that way.
And every business owner listening knows that because when they decided to start a business, they didn't realize how much accountability was helpful. Now they're like, oh, I'm responsible for my own time, my own goals, my own metrics. Like, hold on. I didn't realize I liked those like guardrails. I didn't realize that I actually thrived with that kind of accountability. I mean, that's actually literally what I do with my clients is, okay, what do you want? What does the accountability look like? Because that's what you're wanting. You want that structure. And yet
your safety and security comes from it.
Exactly. Like you want the clarity about even something as simple as, okay, I want to see how I can serve my business the best. Well, wouldn't that be amazing if you just knew exactly how you need to serve your business the best? Meaning you're telling them what their high value activities are and their tasks. You want that. Everyone listening wants that. And yet that's what you need to give to your team members. You need to give them those guardrails. You need to have that accountability. You need to tell them these things of all the things you do are the highest value to the company. These are non-negotiables.
Everything you just described is leadership. That's what that is. So don't overcomplicate it and think you need to be charismatic and inspirational. You can be logical and structured and be a great leader. Everything you're saying is leading the company to be healthy, for people to be happy, for people to, again, go home. We talk about from a culture standpoint, and when you're building this as a leader, a definition of a positive culture, I'm going to simplify it way down for you, is the people leave every day better than when they came in. That's it. That could mean clarity. I got clarity today and I feel good when I leave at the end of the day. It could mean that I got some recognition of the hard work I'm doing and I solved that customer problem and worked hours, beyond what I was expected. It could be I had a great interaction with another employee in the organization and, it feels really good. How are you setting up your team for success every day? Because what most organizations do, especially larger corporate organizations that a lot of us have escaped, is they might even bring us in high energy. They deplete us all day long with a lack of accountability and politics and drama, right? And not caring about us and feeling transactional. And they send us home to our liquor cabinets right? And they send us home to our families in a worse place than when we came in. My goal is to help organizations and businesses say, let's flip that. They might be bringing in all the drama of home, financial stresses and family stresses and, right? Like relationship issues. And we're going to fill them up all day long here and send them home better than when they came to us.
Man,
that's what a positive culture is.
If that is great culture, when you were talking about profitability, that creates a tremendous amount of loyalty, which means you're not having turnover and retraining. Like those dots can be very closely connected from one to the other.
Right. And they are, right? I mean, the studies and thankfully, right, the last 5 years, culture and business results have been studied at a level. I mean, we talk about it in the book over and over again, the data that we now have that ties those two together. So the growth percentage of companies that have a positive culture, right? There's certain factors, but they articulate that they have a positive culture. Those companies outperform the S&P 500 index by 4 to 5 times. So take that even for a small business. That could mean 50% growth instead of 25% growth, right? When your people are dedicated to the vision, they feel seen and heard and valued, they will move mountains for you. We've all had, most of us as business leaders have had at least one of those people that was so loyal, right? And so just in it with us. Imagine if you had 10 of those or 100 of those, what you could accomplish.
It would be amazing. I mean, okay, I'm gonna go in a different direction. I want to talk about how this having great culture helps with hiring and firing. So you are so clear with what your culture is. And what I see with many of my clients is that it's actually outweighs that someone's not a culture fit. It's more character. It's I'm showing up late. I'm being disrespectful. I mean, the list goes on, but it falls more under culture than it does skill set.
Yes.
And yet it seems easier oftentimes for a leader to let somebody go because of lack of skill set than lack of a fit in culture. I'd love for you to just speak to that a bit.
We see this a lot and it is hard. So I don't want to make this feel like, well, you should just make a different decision. It's hard. So, the best salesperson that is a jerk to everybody, it's really hard when they're a really good salesperson, right? Or really good. The producers are the hardest people. When they can get stuff done, they're the hardest people to let go. But what you're doing is you're actually then making a decision about the culture that you're building. So
100%.
no decision is a decision.
Yeah.
So we say very simply to our clients, you have 2 options as a leader: to change the people or to change the people. And it's, it's funny to laugh at, but think about it.
So true.
You either change the behaviors of the people that aren't meeting what you want your business to be, and a lot of people, you can guide them. They're not a lost cause if they don't have the behaviors and the values, or they're not showing up in the right way. That can be fixed if you set the right standards, as you said earlier, right? And let them know this is what we're going to tolerate, because you get what you tolerate. If you tolerate it, that's what everyone else is then seeing and saying, well, this is how I'm supposed to show up, right? But if you give them those guardrails and then they still can't live within those guardrails, they are the biggest cancer and will absolutely have an impact on your top and bottom line of your business. Whether you can directly tie it or not, they are impacting your business. And even worse, they're impacting your employment brand and your customer brand.
Absolutely. The word cancer was what was going through my head as I was listening to you, and then you said it. I'm thinking of like my last corporate position. And I mean, this was probably almost 15 years ago. And I just remember not having respect for the highest level leadership, because they had a couple people in leadership positions, that were horrendous. Like people would avoid that hall. They would dread meetings with these people. Like, they're 2 people is what I'm thinking of. And it was the fact that they had just been there for so long. Like, oh, well, they've been here probably longer than the top leadership had been there. And so it was just, this is it. This is them. I'm trying not to say their names. Do you know how when somebody's some way and you're like, oh, they're just Sam. They're just being Sam. Yeah. When you have that culture where everybody knows what that means when you say that person's name, like, that just gives me chills. And I remember that was actually one of the reasons I left. I was like, oh my gosh, they're never going to change this. How can they have standards in one area and not in another? Like, a confusion. That is the word. Like, we were just talking about confusion with leadership earlier. That is the overwhelming feeling that I have when I think about those times.
Right. And those people, if you think it's going to get better, right, over time, it's not like a fine wine. It's not going to get better with age. it's going to get worse because then they have you hostage. And I see a lot of business owners that are held hostage by an employee that's been there a really long time or has a ton of knowledge or has a ton of customer connections. And it's only going to get worse, right? They're only going to have you more and more hostage if you don't start to fix it. But the other thing is you're setting the tone for what you want your business to be. And by letting go. So when I have a business owner that has one of those people and they'll say, I really care about my company, I care about my people, I kind of call BS on them if they're not taking care of that person that's harming the other people, right? And harming then you can't tell me you care about the company because you can't make this hard decision. The rest of the team will fill in. It's that analogy of a glass of water, right? If you pull something, the water fills in. You have to have the confidence that if you get rid of the cancer that's affecting everyone else and causing them, right, to not love what they're doing and not and avoiding coming, wanting to be at work and have these conversations, when you remove that, your team will fill in the space.
Yeah.
They will help you and they will make sure everything gets held together until you figure out what to do next. Most business owners just think everything's going to fall apart because that person leaves. And it's at the exact opposite is what actually happens.
I agree. And when you want to tie a line to profitability, I just love that you opened up that way, right? Is that oftentimes those employees that are holding you hostage are doing things the way they've always been done. They're not open. Like one of the biggest issues with this is that they're not actually open to change. They're not open to doing something different or more efficient. They kind of get ingrained. And then because the owner or the leadership is held hostage, it's like, okay, well, we'll work over here, but we're going to leave that alone. Right. How can you have a healthy business and just deny one area or one role in your company? You really can't.
No. And what you don't realize is that person single-handedly, even though they believe they're doing the right thing, can cause your business to hit a ceiling. And ceilings can be cultural, financial, but you won't recognize it until it's too late. Right? Because you needed to change 6 months or a year ago and they refused. And now you're at a point where you can't scale to that next thing, right? That the market is providing to you because that person didn't want to change. They didn't want to do a process differently. They didn't want to adopt a new system. We hear it all the time where like, yeah, we put in the CRM, but Joe doesn't want to use it. So we just kind of, what do you mean Joe doesn't want to use it? If the business needs it, right? We got to figure that out.
Right. All right. So we're coming to an end, but I really want to ask, is it ever too late to change the culture? So you're leading your team. You realize you're lacking in these skill sets. You've got team members that are running the show. Is it ever too late?
No. And the reason being is your culture is evolving all the time. So that's the myth that I think is really important. And I'm glad you asked this question, is that as the business owner or business leader, you don't control the culture, you impact it, right? So you don't get to declare, here's what the culture is. You can put standards and values in place, but the culture, if you imagine the analogy of the culture is like a piece of fabric, and every single person in your organization is a part of that fabric, you included. Now you might have a little more pull, right? Or you have a little more, but you don't control the culture. Every hire you make, every customer you bring in, right, that your team works is part of your culture. And so every day you have the opportunity to say, as a leader, how am I going to impact the culture today? And so you can change it because it's not going to be you declare it. It's that you slowly, 1%, right, start to shift the culture away from the things you don't want and towards the things you do want. And then the company will naturally be impacted by that and move.
Yeah.
Right. So it can't be I'm just going to declare it is something different. It's got to be that slow movement.
I thought I was done. I got more for you. Hold on. So when we're talking about impact, I think what we need to hear is that this is a slow process. This isn't a quick win. This isn't a quick dopamine hit. This isn't like you change one day and everyone should just notice you've changed how you're leading.
Yeah.
What can someone expect with a timeline and maybe there is no expectation. I'm open to any answer.
Yeah.
But like, you go in and you're like, I'm going to back up. This is what I want to say. Most of our role as business owners is like, okay, check. We got it off the list. The project's done, this and that. And culture is not one of those things. And so how do we get this like feedback loop of like, we're on the right track or we're not? And is the pace correct? And are we getting any kind of positive traction? How long before we're like, maybe we're not on the right track? It's been 3 months. I don't see any improvements.
Yeah. So really good question. There's a lot in there, but a couple of things. That the first thing is be consistent, right? The changes, continue doing them. I'm going to go back to the kid analogy, right? You don't see it immediately, but you know they're listening, right? You know they hear you, and it's got to be having some impact. But it might be 3 months from now that they say something that you're like, oh my God, you were listening to me, right? Or you get it, you're connecting it. So you have to, there's a little bit of blind faith that if you're consistent, it will start to move things, right? You'll start to see the team show up differently with each other. You'll start to see them solve problems. You have to think of it, culture, as a mindset, not an event.
Right? I've never heard that before.
It's a mindset that you have to have where you're just, and some things are going to work and some aren't. So my guidance is to start simple. And you didn't tee this up on purpose, but we also, another one of the free downloads we have is a culture scorecard. And you could keep that to yourself. You could help your team. But once you have your vision, set some simple metrics that will tell you if the culture is shifting in the direction you want it to be. And these are not, they're not just turnover metrics, like are people leaving and it could be operational efficiency metrics, right? It can be sales metrics. We talk about a culture scorecard being all-inclusive of all of the aspects of your business, because you'll see all of those trending positive if the culture is also trending positive. Right? You might not be able to directly correlate it, but it will tell you if the things you're doing are having a positive impact on your business results. So that scorecard really matters because there are a lot of things you can measure. We have clients that measure utilization of their people. And when they start working on the culture, their utilization metrics go up, which is profitability. Right? We're doing more with the resources that we have. So there are metrics that you can get really creative with to tell you that what you're doing is having an impact, but you have to have patience. It's not going to go from one day to the next. It's that consistent parenting.
I love that. I think that's a great place to end. I would love for you to share with our audience how they can learn more from you. You've got a podcast. Why don't you give them the goodies?
Yeah, and hopefully you'll put this in the podcast notes, but just,
absolutely.
Instagram, Jaime Taets, LinkedIn, again, always willing to have conversations like this to help, business owners really think differently. The book, if you really want to dive into culture and educate yourself as a leader, is thecultureclimb.com. That'll link you, I think, also to all my Instagram and all of that, where we try to put out really good content to just help leaders be inspired to just continue to evolve and be better. But the book is also a great read for your team, right? It's written to be simple and to help your team really have ownership in the culture. So that's a great place to start.
I love it. And your podcast?
Superpower Success. Yeah, we've been going for about the same amount of time. And podcast has a little different lens than this, but it's really just focused on business owners and leaders and their success journeys and being inspired by their successes and their failures, right? And their mistakes that they've made along the way, and just hearing those stories and that wisdom.
I think that's always inspiring, empowering to know that you're not alone. So I know it's a different lens. I love that you're doing that. This journey can really feel like, oh, I'm the one stumbling. Nobody else is. No, you got to hear those stories to understand it's part of the process.
It is. Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here and spending your time with us, Jaime.
Thanks for having this conversation. I think it's important and I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I have loved having you listen to the Small Business Straight Talk podcast. And I sure hope you found my conversation with Jaime to be insightful and inspiring, that you walk away and you start asking the questions of how can you lead a bit differently? How can you affect and improve the culture in your company. And perhaps you have takeaways on how improved culture can help with your productivity. No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. So based on my conversation with Jaime today, what is one thing that you can take back to your business? What is one thing that you can implement next time there is an opportunity to lead your team in a bit of a different way, to improve the culture, to prioritize the culture in your business? I sure hope you take it and you take action today. And as a reminder, at the top of today's episode, I went behind the scenes and invited you to join me inside Leverage Lab. If you haven't already gone and checked this out to see if it's a right fit for you and your business, please go do that right now. You can do that by heading on over to amberdelagarza.com/Leverage Lab. If you are new here, welcome. If you are a longtime listener, I invite you to leave me a review. Wherever you're listening to this episode of Productivity Straight Talk, I would appreciate a review so that others can hear your experience of tuning in each week and how it has impacted your business. So that's my Straight Talk for today. Until next time, have a productive week.